The NIL landscape is changing again. Is Auburn ready to pivot?
Weekend Tailgate brought to you by our friends at the Rage Room. I'm sorry, Midweek Report brought to you by our friends at the Rage Room. If you've got some rage to get out and something in the Auburn media makes you mad, you visit our friends at the Rage Room. You can find them at 1510 2nd Ave, Opelika, Alabama. Or if you're in the Birmingham area, 2616 7th Ave South, they got axe throwing. They've got baby car seats to beat. They've got windshields you can break. They've got very unique ways that you can do team building. The Rage Room, we appreciate them for sponsoring this segment. I want to thank our friends at setsforsociety.ai. Visit setsforsociety.ai today. Get to know yourself. Get to know your team. Get to know how you work with a team with setsforsociety.ai. They have unique personality assessment tests that you can take that tell you more about yourself, more about your team, more about how you can be a more productive team member, how you can be a more productive coworker, how you can just be more productive yourself. Get to know yourself and your team better with setsforsociety.ai. Visit setsforsociety.ai today to get your personality assessment started now. I want to thank our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORTER to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Visit them for all your herbal medicinal needs. And our friends at the Vibe Vault, you can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right next to the Marco's Pizza and the Renfro Supermarket, across the street from Chattahoochee Valley Community College on Highway 431, Phoenix City. The Vibe Vault, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. Guys, check us out on podcasts, all the podcast platforms. We are there bringing you lots of great audio-only content with the Auburn Express Up-Tempo College, Just a Sec, and even the War Report gaming channel. We've been dropping lots of stuff to Just a Sec these days. Guys, you want to get on this, so whether you're on your way to school, work, dropping the kids off, the War Report has you covered with all your favorite Auburn content in audio-only format. You're on the go. Your sports media should be too. We're there for you on podcasts.
Yes, indeed. Appreciate everybody who's joining us on a Wednesday night. We are here talking more NIL because the more things stay the same, which is college football, the more things change. NIL is not a settled situation. Just to back up and kind of recap how we arrived at today, House settlement, right? So House versus the NCAA lawsuit happens. The judge grants the House settlement to players to allow for revenue sharing that happens, and they make the whole clearinghouse situation where deals that are outside of that revenue sharing are supposed to be going through this clearinghouse, right? And Auburn makes this firm stance that says, we think that this is going to float in the direction that those deals for collectives are not going to be what they consider a legitimate business case. And so they're going to have a much more scrutiny, and it's going to count towards what eventually would be a salary or a hard cap for payments that could be issued to players. Most recently, there has been a drastic pivot in that direction. According to a Yahoo article that I'm reading from right now, attorneys for House plaintiffs have struck an agreement with the power conferences in the NCAA to allow officials to amend the decision-making from the industry's new enforcement arm, the College Sports Commissions, related to how booster-backed collectives can compensate athletes. Multiple sources, have confirmed this with Yahoo. So basically, what they're saying is Yeah, I know what we once said, but NIL collectives, you guys are good to go. And the legitimate business cases for allowing these payments to go to athletes is not how that's going to go down now. So collectives are back on the table and in a major way, which means it's the Wild West again. People just do what they want to, right? Like, what does that mean when you read that, Mike?
Yeah, look, collectives were never off the table, but
They weren't, but they needed to be legitimate business cases for them to
uh,
be able to issue funds. And the way most collectives were operating, that was not the case.
yeah, I think that what this settlement is saying is that we are treating collectives like any other third party business,
Correct.
and the push to count collective deals as toward the cap. That's really what this affects. This says that, in a lot of cases where those deals may have counted towards your cap, there's a chance they're going to not be able to. There's a greater chance they're not going to be able to. So it doesn't mean that every deal from the collective will not get counted toward the cap. But this is if you were advocating for that part, then this essentially nullifies that, and it gives universities a way to essentially skirt the cap and say, look, we're going to spend all the money that you put in this pot, and our collective is going to do all these deals that don't count towards the cap. And we're essentially going to, like, I'm quoting Greg Sankey, spend into oblivion. That's what this opens the door for. So the question that we're answering today is, did Auburn get it wrong? Did they get it wrong based on what this deal says? And this is kind of what a lot of people were singing. They were Feinbaum said it when I went on a show last week. He said, "Call me when these rules are enforceable, when they're enforced." And I was on John's side about this. I thought, hey, look, if you're going to have rules, if you're going to put up guardrails, at least to try to abide by them, at least initially. A lot of people said, why? They've never proven that they can get anything done in this regard. Greg Sankey said it's highly frustrating. People asked for these guardrails, and now they're mounting legal challenges against them. Looks like so far the universities are winning this battle, and Auburn has time to pivot because December is a long way from now. So if any athlete, if they were restricting the money flow, just unrestricted. From what I
there's no reason now to have those restrictions based on what they're saying right now. Like it went on to say that some of the deals that got struck down most recently, teams are going to resubmit those deals under this new guidance. So you asked the question, did Auburn get this wrong? I would say no, they actually got it right. And now they're changing the rules again to say, I know what we initially said, but we got so much pushback. Now we're going to change because, that's a legitimate business case. That's a legitimate business case. We weren't looking at it that way. You guys have a good point. So yes and no, right? Like, yes, you got it right. Your interpretation was correct. John Cohen and whoever else was, but now they've changed the rules again to say, we're actually looking at it differently now than when we initially put those rules out there.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, there were just a lot of people who felt like trying to abide by rules that have never proven to be enforceable was the wrong approach. And I can't agree with, I can't agree with that. I actually am comforted by the fact that Auburn's AD tried to do the right thing, at least initially, and that Hugh Freeze signed on to it. And there's got to be some rules in place. There's got to be some guardrails up. But what we're looking at is no guardrails, pretty much as it pertains to spending. And we've given the universities some autonomy to give a certain amount of dollars directly to the athletes, but it was funny. I was on social media earlier this morning, and there were some UCF fans that were screaming at Terry Mohajir, the UCF AD, "You nuked the kingdom for nothing."
Yeah, so I think that's an important thing to see in what was, I think, really good foresight on the part of John Cohen and the people around Auburn is they did not get rid of their NIL collective in case they were still going to need it. And that's not been the case at a lot of universities. A lot of universities were like, oh, well, and this is why I have always been on the side of John Cohen actually was doing this in a very smart way, is they didn't just decide, all right, well, to heck with On to Victory, we're fine. We'll just proceed with what we got right now. They were like, okay, we'll put On to Victory on hold just in case we need to be able to shift gears here. And it looks as if they're going to have to shift gears.
Yeah, I agree. They circled August 1st, but to me, this ruling makes August 1st irrelevant.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, now
Yeah.
you got to switch gears now.
Yeah. August 1st. We'll have to wait another 8 days. Just start spending. If the money is there, start spending it. My sources have told me essentially there was a pivot right sometime around the time that we were at media days, in the middle of singing that they were doing the right thing, where this was coming down the pipe. They opened up the bag and bam, they landed Jacquez Wilkes. So I'd expect more of that. I'd expect more of that. It's funny. We released a segment with our guy Brooks Austin. He does great work. He sat down with us at media days, and he said, so Mike, so Auburn is the only one that's getting this right, and everybody else is getting this wrong. And I was like, why? I don't get this narrative as if Auburn is the only one taking this. Auburn is not the only school, even in the conference, taking this approach.
Right. There are schools that went way further than what Auburn did. Again, some schools got rid of their collectives altogether. So no, Auburn isn't the only one, number one, moving in that was moving in that direction. But number two, Auburn still didn't go as far as a lot of other people. There are schools that are in a way worse situation than Auburn, both financially because they're not going to be able to keep up, and in structure because they don't have their collectives still in place. So I've always been on this is a lot of panic about nothing with a lot of time left to pivot. If this was 2 weeks before the signing day, then I'd say, oh man, yeah, you got a lot of work to do. But it's months out from signing day.
Right now, outside the top 25, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Oklahoma at 36 in recruiting right now. Vanderbilt, obviously, they're Vanderbilt. They're at 43. You should never be behind a Vanderbilt in anything. Kentucky, Missouri is at 76 in recruiting. Auburn at 65. The Jacquez Wilkes boosted them like 13 spots. There are other schools outside this, and the schools that are up in the SEC that are in are the ones that we know never stop spending. I mean, they've been spending. That's Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama, Texas, and LSU. Tons of money on the table. I want to retell this story for anybody who potentially missed it. At media days, another school's GM was having a conversation by our table. And I jumped in on the conversation because I was like, hey, this is interesting. He introduced himself, and then he used Alabama as an example and said they've got, I think, 5 5-stars in their recruiting class right now. The going rate for a 5-star is $1 million. So if you have 5 5-stars, based on what we know about the cap rules, $20.5 million. If you're giving anything to any other sport at all, you maybe have $15-16 million to play with for football. So tell me how they're blowing, he said, a third of their cap on 5 players and then still finding money for the rest of the class if you've got a top 5 class. And I said, that's a great point. And he said, look, man, they're acting as if these rules don't exist, and they're blowing way past the cap. That's it. They're spinning over the cap, and they don't care. So Auburn now has to be in that boat. Look, for everyone on social media, for every fan that said this is the wrong approach, I hear you. I'm not saying that you were wrong about this. I'm saying I understand why the university at least tried to adhere to the guardrails that were put up. When they say Auburn's the only one, no, it's not Auburn. It's not like Auburn went on some tangent on their own. They literally were just following the rules. That was it. We're talking about following the rules. And if you're going to it's hard for me to get mad at Cohen for following the rules. So As you've mentioned, and I've mentioned that we mentioned many times before, if this were 2 weeks before signing day, sure, I get it, because your class is probably sunk. It's July. And you just landed a top 100 recruit in Jaquez Wilkes. And I suspect that that's not going to be the last guy that they land. If money was the only thing standing in the way, truly, there's nothing to stop you from putting more money on the table and moving this thing forward. So it will be super interesting to see where Auburn goes from here as far as NIL is concerned. I jumped out there, but we're going to keep the party going, guys. For Auburn, it is this recruiting class has nothing to do with what Auburn needs to do in the fall to get to 8 wins, to get to 9 wins. And there's going to be enough meat on this class left for Auburn to still set a good base for the future. One recruiting class is not going to undo the years of work that Hugh Freeze has done since he got to Auburn. It's just not. So if you recruited well, and more importantly, player retention, they retained a high number of those guys that they brought in the first 2 years. They've been working out, man. They went out, they got Keandre Lambert-Smith. He was one of the 4 best receivers in the conference. Now you might have 2 of the 5 best receivers in the conference on your squad, minimum. I would say Auburn has probably 3 or 4 of the best 10 receivers on their roster right now. Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, Malcolm Simmons has a chance to be a top 10 receiver in this league. And, throw a rock at any of the other top 100 recruits they brought in at that position. So this ruling it's so funny. Again, we're sitting here and everybody was saying, oh, so August 1st is going to get here and all this stuff is going to happen. I was like, oh, doesn't really matter now. They came out, they won the battle, and they said, hey, yeah, we'll make it clear for you. Collectives have a much easier path to getting their deals through NIL Go without them counting toward the cap. That's all. That was the key there.
Right.
The key was whether or not these deals were going to count toward the cap or not. And if you're treating them like any other third party, then there's a greater chance that they're not going to count towards your cap, right? They essentially have to do a lot of digging to find out how coordinated the deal was between the collective and the athlete and the university to say, okay, like this deal is not necessarily null and void, but it counts towards your cap and you've already spent your cap. So, this deal can't go through as it is right now. They've got a very, very interesting pivot here. I don't think Hugh Freeze has an issue spending money, but I will tell you this. I think that for Freeze and Cohen, part of the allure to a cap was that it stops the money conversation at some point and it brings you back to traditional tenets of recruiting.
Yes.
And I have to agree with them. Like at some point, you don't have to talk money anymore. And you could just say, hey, we're the best football fit for you.
Right.
Money aside.
I mean, and it allows the balance of a competitive balance to actually be a part of the conversation again, where it's just like, well, we have unlimited spending power, so we can just go buy the best players, right? Like that puts you in and that's kind of how it's been the entire time, is the competitive balance just wasn't there. And you had to have, to your point, these money conversations be introduced into the initial portions of this conversation. It's no longer with this new ruling going to be a situation where we'll talk about that later. It's like, no, it's literally got to be on the table from day one. And if it's not on the table from day one, we might as well not sit down at the table with a lot of these young men. And that's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, it's Auburn has a lot to offer. Any high school kid coming out. You've got great facilities. You've got a rich football tradition. You've got a history of being able to win championships. You have a history of producing Heismans. I mean, there's nothing you can't accomplish in college football as it is today at Auburn University. And if you are one of those schools, then you never really wanted money to be a part of it. Because you know what? All that rich tradition that you have and those things that you have to offer, a generational advantage, I would call it. Other schools can't just suddenly materialize that, right? Like that is a historical leg up that Auburn and Alabama and Ohio State and Texas and Michigan and some of these other schools, Florida, have had on the rest of college football. The NIL conversation was supposed to give athletes something else to think about. Just don't, if you're a top tier athlete, don't write our school off just because we don't have all these things. We can even that conversation with money. But if you're going to let the big boys spend what they want, then it's not really an advantage for these other schools. People were like, NIL, people don't like it because it's going to even the playing field. No, it was never to do that because they still have more money than you. It may help you get a recruit here or there. Like Travis Hunter, for example, would have never even considered going to Jacksonville State before NIL.
The Jackson State,
the Jackson State. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was an option because they could funnel him seven figures. If I'm going to make that sacrifice, and when he could have named his ticket and gone to any school he wanted. So they needed money on the table to get him there, and those other schools didn't necessarily need money. They're saying, "Look, if you come here, you're going to leave a first round draft pick," which he was, first round draft pick. So,
which he likely would have been wherever he wanted to go, though. So
wherever he went, the issue was he going to be an alum of your school when it was all said and done? And money was the only thing that was going to shift a talent like that to the Jacksonville States. Enough of them will never commit for money because, quite frankly, there's not enough money out there. Like Jackson State had enough money to go get one Travis Hunter. Did they have enough money to go get four of them in one recruiting cycle?
And honestly, that wasn't even really from Jackson State, right? Like that was Dion and his people being able to make outside deals, right? Yep. And so, you know, that's why the coach that you hire actually matters, right? Because you're able to leverage some things differently than other schools are able to. But he helps to balance out the ledger a little bit because of who he is as a coach. But every school doesn't have a you know, which that actually opens up a very different conversation as to whether or not schools are going to start moving away from let me find the best coach to go out there and develop my guys. And now, you know, like Auburn just recently got a new assistant GM. Are they going to start taking the North Carolina approach? Not to say that Bill Belichick is not a tremendous coach, because he is, but guys who actually know how to do the business dealings a little bit more and let them be CEOs of a program, as opposed to, well, he's the best X and O coach and let me get like, no, we're just going to go get a CEO for our program and then hire a really good offensive coordinator, hire a good defensive coordinator. That changes what you're able to do. Let's just go hire a celebrity coach who can maybe get us better NIL situations on the table.
That, you know, that is a great point. Is there a better coach to have in the NIL era than Bill Belichick? A guy who's been both coach and GM and had to manage caps and picks, and you know, I don't know.
The only way that you're in a better position is if you actually you have a GM that's not your coach that's helping to manage that stuff for you. But no, as a head coach, he is perfect for this because he's had to figure this stuff out because he's been a coach and a GM.
And they had a history in New England of not just throwing top dollar money at every free agent. They were very stingy with their money. The Tom Brady, for all he was worth to that franchise, was underpaid for almost his entire career based on what he could have got on the open market. They had a formula for success that said, hey, if we spend all our money in these areas, I'll go out and give me a little money to go get this guy and that guy. And then you need buy-in from your superstar to say, hey, you're going to take a little bit less, but I will cement your legacy in the annals of NFL history. Yeah, by putting a team around you that has a chance to win a Super Bowl almost every single year he was in New England for 2 decades. I asked this question long before it started happening. I said, it seems like we're headed toward needing general managers for college football. And every administrative person I talked to on Auburn side said, yes, that's exactly where this is headed. Now you've got multiple GMs on some teams. So this can all, is it enough time for Auburn to pivot and save the 2026 recruiting class? And I want to ask you this question, because we talk all week, but I have not got a chance to talk to you about this. We haven't had the conversation about what would be an acceptable result for 2026 recruiting. What finish would satisfy fans to say, you know what? Even though they took the wrong approach, at least initially, we're happy with the 12th rated recruiting class, or the 15th rated recruiting class, or is it top 10 or bust at this point for Auburn with the type of money that's being spent? If the cap was going to be enforceable, I was very adamant that I thought that with an enforceable cap, the days of stacking top 5 classes 4 or 5 years in a row is over, because you will have to spend a lot of money on roster retention over. This is what they do in the NFL, right? The offseason hits, and and you say, hey, we need to re-sign our left tackle. And that's going to cost the money. And I think that a lot of college football fans are missing that piece, that these guys are actually renegotiating their contracts year over year.
Right.
To keep them together.
This is actually where we get into a conversation like what B. Will was saying about, and some people in this channel have said about, or the chat. They probably, if they're going to do this, then you're going to really need to get into multi-year contracts with players, so that you're not having to go through the negotiation process every single offseason to figure out who's going to be on your team, what do you have available for your budget. Like, it's going to become untenable for coaches to be able to do that sort of thing when you have to renegotiate every single offseason.
Yeah,
it's just not. There's no way to
holdouts. I'm holding out because I didn't get the deal I wanted. This is pro sports. This is quite literally pro sports. Holdouts are going to become a thing, and you're going to have to grow college staffs administratively just to deal with all these extra layers that you have to managing. And guys are going to be assigned players. Your player rep is so and so, and he is going to deal with your agent and your contract negotiations and all that stuff. I can't imagine one guy doing it for as many guys as will be on these college rosters. You got per the House settlement, right? You've got 105 scholarship players. Now, not all of those guys are going to have negotiating power, certainly. But man, I'm telling you, even managing like 20 or 30 of them is going to be a gargantuan off-season task.
Yeah.
When these guys come through and they want more money. I'm interested to see what will loyalty look like in the NIL era. What will it mean to be loyal, to commit to an institution, to start at that institution, and to finish at that institution?
I mean, for quality players, I don't know that it's going to exist absent of you playing early and winning frequently, right? Like, I just don't know that there's a recipe for you redshirting initially and some mix of okay results on the field and poor results. That you're going to see a lot of turnover in those instances. Patience is going to be something that's going to be difficult to come by. That's always been difficult, but like, your sitting on the bench impacts how much money you can potentially make. You can't make more money from the bench. If you come in at X amount of dollars, you're going to be stuck at X amount of dollars until you start showing something different on the field. So that loyalty is going to be challenged from the bench, especially if that team isn't winning, right? Like, you can afford a little bit more leash when you're winning football games. But I don't know, man. Teams are going to be in a really tough position. You asked the question about what's going to be an acceptable number for where Auburn lands in recruiting. I still think where Auburn eventually lands in recruiting will have very little to do with whether or not they pivoted early enough in this situation, and a lot to do with how the performance is on the field. Because I think from Auburn's standpoint, and this has always been the case, in my opinion, they can't outspend everybody in NIL. They just don't have the money to be able to do it. So because you can't outspend everyone, the strategy of retaining your roster is going to be important, and how much of that roster is retained is going to have a lot to do with how successful this team is on the field this year. And more success on the field means better roster retention, which means less of an importance that you sign a top class and really just have the right fits and then fill the rest of it with the transfer portal. I think a top 15 finish would be good if you get the right mix of guys in there. And when you look at what Auburn has right now in recruiting, a lot of where they are from a ranking standpoint is purely numbers, right? Like they only have 11 guys in the class. Some of the guys that are in the top 10 or whatever already have like 20 something plus recruits in their class. So it's not just that Auburn isn't getting in on the top guys. They just purely don't have the numbers to be in the top 25 right now. And so that's going to change. But the question is, like, how high can they get up there? I think top 15 for me, but for the rest of the fan base, there's no telling because, this fan base is as brutal on everything as possible. I think that they're not going to be happy unless they're in the top 3, at least in the conference. And then where that ranks you nationally, I don't know. Top 10 probably.
It's so interesting being 5th in the conference in recruiting, right? You could still be, it's the SEC, right? So you could still be 5th in the conference recruiting and top 10. I mean, you could be a middle of the pack SEC team and well inside the top 25 in recruiting. Right. So, what is acceptable? I think that we've got to start to pivot how we look at this. In 2025, there were 4 SEC teams that were better than Auburn in recruiting: Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. Texas finished 1, Georgia finished 2, Alabama finished 3, Florida finished 7th, Auburn 8th. I think On 3 had them maybe 7th. I'm using the 247 rankings, but firmly inside the top 10 with 26 total commits. So you were 5th in the conference in recruiting last year, and you finished, again, well inside the top 10. Is that the type of finish, do you think, that is reasonable given the pivot they have to make? Remember, they landed a lot of flips last year in season after the season had started. I think, to your point, it is a numbers game at this point. If you're Auburn, you only got like 8 or 9 recruits in the bucket right now, so you need
11.
Legit like triple that to kind of get to where you were last year in terms of numbers.
Yeah, and I just don't think that Auburn's going to attempt to sign as large a class because they devoted so much to the guys that they have coming in. I think Auburn's probably going to be looking for a much smaller class to try to sign and focusing on trying to keep the guys that they have. When you look at the youth and the experience that you're going to be having on the field because they played a lot of guys when they were younger, most of these guys aren't even draft eligible. So they have another season. This is what Coach Hugh Freeze was talking about in terms of his wide receiver room. How many new receivers do we really need to sign if I like all the guys that I have already? And all of those guys aren't even going to play. And I still have to figure out how to keep them on the roster, right? Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Kane, Perry Thompson, all 4 of those guys can't leave unless they exit via the transfer portal. Right. So you're going to, if you retain all 4 of them, have a starting 4 right there. And that's not counting any of the guys that you signed last year. So you've got a full receiver room before you even touch the transfer portal or a new freshman receiver. How much time is Auburn going to spend trying to recruit another receiver out of high school? Probably not a ton. From an offensive line standpoint, you've got 2 or 3 guys that are there already, and you've got some that are on the hopper for this freshman class. How much time are you really spending on that? You've got your quarterback of the future and one already committed to this class. How much time are you really spending on that? You got a bunch of DBs that are sitting around that may not even play this season that have 2 to 3 years of eligibility. How many more guys do you really want to recruit there? The linebacker room is probably where you're going to find some. Defensive line, you'll probably find some. But how many guys realistically does Auburn need to get in this recruiting class to put them in a good depth position versus what they're going to try to figure out how to do in some of these other places out of the transfer portal? I don't know the answer to that, but there's a lot that's still left up in the air about what needs to happen for Auburn coming up here in the very near term, because decisions are being made rapidly by these young men. And I'd be interested to see if Auburn is able to do any of these flips from guys that were potentially leaning towards Auburn, but the money was just so far away from what they were getting somewhere else. It didn't make it a realistic conversation. Are they going back to the table with those guys being like, hey, you know what we said last time, we could only get you blah, blah, blah. Here's a new number.
Yeah. I think we're going to see the wallets open. I think we're about to see the money start flying. John Cohen has bet his future great grandkids, it feels like, on Hugh Freeze. Like, he has bet it all. He is backing this coach. And I think that if it is a matter of making sure he has the resources to be perceived as if he is accomplishing every goal he was hired to, John Cohen's not going to hold back. I don't think he's going to hold back. He's been effusive in his praise and support for Hugh Freeze. And they seem, for what it's worth, they seemed really together on this approach to NIL, which I like that. I like that they were together on it. I like that the AD is saying, hey, we're going to be rule followers and not rule breakers. And the coach did not come out and say, man, they're not letting me spend no more money, dog. Right? Like, right. I like that they were together on this. And because of how Cohen has been with Freeze, I cannot imagine that he saw that report today and said, all right, if this is what it is, this is what it is. Let's game on. Because recruiting, one thing I said repeatedly last week, I heard you say to some people, recruiting was all you had to hang your hat on, really, in these first couple years. Right. So the reason why people are crying so loud about recruiting is because you took away the one thing that they said that gave them hope. Auburn is still an attractive place for top talent. They've got the money to get the guys in there. And then beyond the money, they have all the traditional tenets of recruiting that, you know, and landing high profile prospects that you could want. They've just got to add some wins to the, they just got to add some wins to the equation. If Hugh Freeze goes out and then he wins 9 games this year, we're getting pretty close to the season. So predictions are starting to fly about Auburn's record. Do you take the over or under at 7.5 games? We're seeing that line start to shift a little bit towards, hey, man, 7.5 feels like a gimme with the talent levels and this schedule. So, you know, the sports books are like, man, we don't move this line like half a game, we'll lose our asses on everybody betting the over. Or will they get everybody hyped up to bet the over and then Auburn underperforms it? I don't see it. I just don't see it. I think a lot of the things that Hugh Freeze said this offseason about how close they were that he got fried for were factually correct.
Yeah.
People didn't like the message, but he was right. They were close. They were a couple kicks away from winning 2 more games. If Auburn had gone 7-5 instead of 5-7, do you think there's all this doom and gloom around the program in year 3? I don't think so. If Auburn is an 8-win team, then certainly I think that it'll be one of those things where, you know, we are just, I don't know. Auburn will be in a very, very advantageous place to make a 12-team playoff every single year. Is Jackson Arnold the guy to get you there? Right. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's going to affect your future recruiting. Is there a quarterback in this 2026 cycle? Yeah, they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, no, they signed the guy. Remember, it was like a random, wait, where did this guy come from? Signing a couple of weeks ago.
Chad, help me out. Who was the QB recruit?
You guys did a whole segment on him.
We did. Peyton Falzone.
Yep,
Peyton Falzone. Yeah, Falzone, the Pennsylvania kid. They've got, four-star kid seems to be in the mold of what Hugh Freeze wants. They've got to continue to stack talent, and they've got to have the answer. It's kind of funny, like if you're Texas, right? You went out and you got Quinn Ewers. but you had the answer for who's next already. And it was not even a question. Arch Manning, next man up. It was not even a question. I'm interested to see if Hugh Freeze can build that kind of pipeline. Is Deuce Knight true? Like, is he the guy? Right? Where there's not even a question. After Nick Marshall, we knew undoubtedly that Jeremy Johnson was going to be the guy to get the next shot. Everybody thought he'd do better than what he did. But since then, has Auburn in recruiting had a true, like, next up guy that you felt like this is the guy, this was the plan? The plan is for him to be next.
No, and I'd argue that most schools don't really have that plan and haven't been using that sort of succession plan in this transfer portal era. They've just been, they might have recruited a guy, but then they end up pivoting to a transfer portal guy even before that person hits the field. So that's just kind of been the nature of the beast in the transfer portal era, specifically with the quarterback. And no, Auburn has not. I mean, again, Auburn hasn't been a destination for top tier quarterbacks, though. So you were kind of getting who you could get and then hoping that a savior came along in the portal to be able to be your next up guy, because the guy that you got in that recruiting class wasn't really anybody.
Yeah.
But Deuce Knight looks like he is going to be that guy. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that he has to be. And then who's next? Who's after him? Right. This is what
I think we're way too early to answer that question, because Deuce Knight's got so much eligibility ahead of him. Like, he's going to be playing for the next foreseeable 2 to 3 years. So you don't have to answer that question in this recruiting class, but you do need to figure out when is the right time to answer that question, because as much as you hope Deuce Knight is the guy, you still have to have somebody just in case he isn't, or in case of injury.
Yeah, I mean, if you're hitting on the guys that you're recruiting from high school, like, I think you can answer that question, in the next few months. The same way, this transition from Stetson Bennett to Carson Beck to Gunnar Stockton kind of thing is like, you need some kind of stretch like that if you're Hugh Freeze, where there's no question about who your next guy is. You're going to the portal, but not for a starter. Right, your guy has been developing on campus for a couple of years, and that's going to set the stage for Auburn to win football games down the road. I mean, they're planning some pretty great, like, non-conference games here, where Auburn will be center stage and have a chance to make what I assume in a few years is going to be bigger than a 12-team playoff. That seems like where it's headed right now.
Yeah,
missing a 12-team.
Have you been keeping up with what's happening at Big Ten Media Days about this whole conversation?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I don't know how close we are. I know there's a lot of people who felt like, 9 games in the SEC was coming very soon, and expansion of the playoff was. I'm not as confident as other people are that this is going to get done anytime soon, because it seems as if everybody is entrenching themselves in positions that will not allow for any sort of common ground. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, there was a big hubbub on social media about the SEC. Somebody put out a graphic talking about the scheduling and running from the 9th conference game, and it's just got to make sense, right? It's got to make sense. But what you want is, you want the best players. You want the best players, and you want the most advantageous schedule that gives you a chance to win a championship. Because whether people want to admit it or not, this whole 9-conference thing is a vanity metric. It's fun to be able to say you played 9-conference game, but functionally in the SEC, it really serves no purpose. And that's what Greg Sankey says every single year. He's like, look, we have all these teams have chances to win national championships. Why would we add that game just because? Like, if they do, it would be purely for revenue, but it's not from a competitive standpoint. They don't need it. Yeah, well, there are some.
There's a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense for the SEC, and there's a lot of reasons why I understand what the Big Ten is trying to say. But at the same time, to Greg Sankey's point, like, I don't have to do this. And so, because I don't have to, I'm not going to. And you can't give me a compelling reason to do it, because it doesn't help me in any way whatsoever, other than to make you feel better. I'm not in the business of making you feel better.
You know, if you're Greg Sankey, part of the luxury you enjoy is that you've got great member institutions that have tradition, they have money, they've got great leadership, they've got all the things you need uh, to have a successful conference in today's college football, right? So he doesn't have to create those things. He doesn't have to manufacture those things. He just has to manage those things. And he works for those institutions. I think he's done a great job. We've got to get to the break here, but in talking about NIL and talking about this collective thing kind of opening the door for universities essentially to just spend into oblivion, as Greg Sankey put it. I I'm okay with it because of, yeah, hey, look, man, the institution I root for isn't going to have an issue on the money end. So it just ultimately it ends up coming back to all those regular football things once all the money is even. But
Yeah.
I am a little disappointed in years where you know how we've been there, where we're watching and your team is not in it. So it's just like you just want to see good football. You want to see Alabama get upset, or you want to see the Cinderella win. It sucks that the parity that this was intended to create goes away. To me, this kills the chance that we had to create a system that actually did spread the wealth some, give other institutions a chance at more of those athletes, and create a vacuum where we do have some unusual champions in years, and we do have a chance. I mean, look, in college basketball, there's a lot of teams that make the tournament. A lot of teams that make a tournament. They may not go far, but they get their shot. And if you truly are as good as the schools that you think you can compete with, right, you'll make it. You may have a harder road to hoe to get there, but win your conference and you're in the tournament. Win your conference tournament and you're in. You're going to get a shot. You're going to get a shot to prove yourself against those traditional powerhouses. And as a result, we have had some incredible Final Four runs that have been insane. I wanted that for college football, at least some, where we had a chance to see a really, really good run by a team at the end of the season from one of these other conferences, because we spread the wealth a little bit and they did get a chance at that generational type QB. And he goes on some crazy Heisman type playoff run that gets them there. That's what this system was going to create, and I think that's gone now. I don't think we'll ever see that.
Yeah, no, we are a country mile away from that being a situation right now. All right, we're going to get to the break right here, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about recruiting and NIL, and a little bit more about this conversation about scheduling and the playoff. You all are watching the Midweek Report. Make sure you like the video. Go ahead and share the content with somebody, and we will be back right after this break.
This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com.
The Rage Room. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Set up a session today at one of the 2 great locations in Opelika or Birmingham by visiting opelikaRageRoom.com or BirminghamRageRoom.com.
This episode of the War Report is brought to you by our friends at the Rage Room. Visit them in Opelika at 1510 2nd Ave, or if you're in Birmingham, 2616 7th Ave South. They've got axe throwing. They've got baby car seats to break. They've got windshields you can bust. They've got ways for you to get your rage out without getting arrested. So visit the Rage Room. We appreciate them for sponsoring this segment. I want to thank our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Visit them for all your herbal medicinal needs. I want to thank our friends at the Vibe Vault, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. You can find them at 3462 Crossroads Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. Great partners of the War Report. We thank them for sponsoring this segment as well. And I want to thank setsforsociety.ai. Do you want to get to know yourself? Want to get to know your team? Want to understand how you function within a team? setsforsociety.ai provides unique personality assessments that give you a basis for understanding how you function in a team setting, how your best characteristics relate to your coworkers or your team members or your project members. Setsforsociety.ai today. Visit setsforsociety.ai today to get started with your personality assessment. Get to know yourself. Check us out on podcast, all the podcast platforms. We are there at the Auburn Express, Uptempo, the College Loop, Just a Sec, and the Warport Gaming Channel. If you're on the go and you want your sports media on the go, the War Report has you covered. We put out a lot of content on podcasts. Guys, record numbers of podcast downloads, and that is in large thanks to you guys doing these few things: subscribing, turning on automatic downloads, and making sure all notifications are on your podcast platform. Help us continue to grow that segment of our business. We appreciate you guys for supporting us on audio. Great audio only interview with Ira Bowman and Stephen Pearl. Those are actually two separate interviews. You can go check out. Ike also had an exclusive sit down with Larry Vickers, the Auburn women's head basketball coach. You guys have asked for women's basketball coverage. We've given it to you. You can go check that out on our pod as well too. Great interview with him. We'll jump back into the conversation here, but I do want to give a shout out to Larry Vickers. He's been doing a great job since he's been on the Plains, just kind of pulling together a team for the fall and getting some things. I like what I see coming out of that program organizationally. Hopefully it leads to wins in the fall and spring for Auburn women's basketball, but they're working really, really hard on the hardwood. On the men's side, did you see the
Philip Jovic,
the video
splash?
Oh my God. Woo! Yikes, man. Come on. They're going to be fun. I think both teams are going to be fun to watch this fall.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they pull things together for both of those teams. Definitely going to be keeping a close eye on all things basketball as we get closer to the season. We're keeping an eye over here on the chat, and you guys are doing your due diligence with doing things here. There is a poll right now in the chat. What is an acceptable recruiting ranking for Auburn to finish? And the answers are coming in right now. 29 votes so far. There are a total of like 160 people in the chat, so we need a lot more people to weigh in on this. Top 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 16 to 25 right now with 45%. 11 to 15 is the range that most people are saying that they would find acceptable for Auburn to finish in recruiting this season. So before the end of it, we'll end this poll probably in about 10 minutes and see what the numbers are looking like. Go over here to the chat really quickly with our super chat starting us off from Wardank Eagle, who says, which potential flip would be more valuable to the roster? Shadarian Morgan or Vodney Cleveland?
Shadarian Morgan would be massive.
From a shockwave standpoint, and because he is at Bama, yes, I just don't see them going after a top wide receiver with the if they're worried about money. And I feel like CD Morgan is absolutely a Bama guy through and through. I don't know that Auburn's going to be able to offer. It feels like a very much a Ryan Williams type of situation where they'd be chasing their own tail in that situation. I think Cleveland is a more likely flip, but which would be the more seismic flip? Yes, I think Morgan would be.
Shadarian Morgan, we're here. I'm hearing some good things coming potentially there. So look, we pay attention to recruiting. We have sources in recruiting, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we report officially on recruiting. I'm just saying our ears have been to the ground on this one, and Auburn has some huge potential flips in the pipeline that could spin recruiting in their favor. And if you're removing the spending guardrails, I feel more confident about their ability to be able to do that. Because quite frankly, there just until we got this report, there was no path to getting these guys Ike under with their approach before.
Yeah, so, I mean, the only path would have been for the system to invalidate some of those deals and say, all right, that money that you promised that kid, that's not real. It can't happen. And then it evens the playing field a little bit more. But again, yeah, if it's going to be a spending frenzy, then Auburn definitely has to go back to the table.
Yeah. So for me, it's Cedarian and Morgan. Both are great players. I think Morgan is ranked the 12th overall player in the class of 2026. Cleveland, I'm not. I know he's I know he's a top 50 guy, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where he is ranked. But man,
I
you're
couldn't
talking
tell you off
about
the top of my head.
53rd, and he's a Texas commit, right? Like so. I mean, both those would boost. Like Morgan would rocket Auburn's recruiting class, even without the numbers like way up there, up
Yeah,
bordering
for sure.
top 25. Yeah, Cleveland obviously would move the needle quite a bit, like like 12 or 13 spots. So, yeah, look, man, we'll see what they can do, but they top recruits aren't shying away from Auburn, even despite the lack of results on the field. They're still giving Auburn a serious look.
Yeah, they believe again. Hugh Freeze done a great job of selling the vision. He's got a really great recruiting staff that's able to help him get out there and be on one accord what that vision is. That's always been the case since he's gotten here. Again, Auburn didn't just all of a sudden forget how to recruit. So we will start to see some results. Now, how much those results play dividends, that's yet to be seen. Dustin Pace jumps in and says 8 wins is not acceptable only because the lack of marquee win, but because of horrific losses, 9 minimum barring a top 5 recruiting class. So basically he's saying that if you win 8 games, you likely do not have a marquee win in that pool. So you need to get at least 9 to get a marquee win there, unless, of course, the unthinkable happens and you drop a game that you weren't supposed to, but you get that marquee win as well. So
I think this is debatable at 8 win. At 7, you definitely did not get a marquee win. You definitely had a terrible loss. But before we move on, again, we keep this in here. Just let's take a look at this, right? 8 wins. Which one of these is count them out for me, man? Like, if you win 8, how can you not have a marquee win? What would you not consider?
The question is, if you have 5 losses, what are your acceptable 5 losses here? Of course, Georgia, Alabama. I would say Texas A&M, Georgia, Oklahoma, Alabama. I mean, yeah, you don't have a marquee win in there if you lose 5. Who's the marquee win?
Yeah. So you would not consider Baylor or Oklahoma a marquee win.
So yeah, I mean, marquee, a good win, but I don't know that it's marquee.
Yeah. Baylor's going to be a really good team.
4 games, you're going to have to lose the 4 highest ranked guys on your schedule, which is Texas A&M, Georgia, Alabama, and either you split Baylor and Oklahoma there. And again, I don't know that either of those would be considered marquee.
Yeah, because the alternative is that you beat Georgia or Alabama, but then you still lose 4 or 5. That means you 100% dropped a very disappointing game, right? You had the horses to beat one of those 2 teams, and you lose to Missouri. Boy, that at home, that would definitely take the air out of it for me. I defend home court, man. Like, I mean, you obviously got Georgia and Alabama at home. Those are the only 2 teams I think it would be acceptable to lose to at home this year. You don't have any neutral site games on this schedule. You got to go to Oklahoma for the first time in college football history. Auburn's proven they can win in College Station. That's a great environment, and it's a tough environment, but like they've gone down there and gotten a win. So I'm with you. I think at 8, it would be hard to say that there was a marquee win in there unless you did actually beat Georgia and Alabama and then lost a very disappointing game to one of those other schools.
Right. You'd basically have to do what Ole Miss and Missouri did last year, which is get to 9 wins, but like one of the wins you're scratching your head, like, how did you lose that game?
Yeah, that's the Hugh Freeze special, right? Beat Alabama, lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, these are things that he's done. So hopefully that's a trend we see him break this year.
Stephen Neely, will NIL collective amounts be public knowledge? I would assume because they have to register all of those deals that yes, they would be public knowledge. Because again, I don't know how you go through a registration process with every deal over a certain amount and it not be something that someone could go and research publicly. it's going to go through
The
a
issue
clearinghouse,
is,
and you assume
yeah,
yes.
public knowledge, right? Like, or like freedom of information, I guess,
Yeah.
type situation. That's a great question. And I would assume, that if it's going through a clearinghouse, that at least some aspect of that deal has to be made public.
Right.
I wonder though if that crosses over, so for example, we know that as a federally funded public institution, there are definitely things that they have to make public. And
Right.
so the money coming from the university 100% has to be on the table. Like, I mean, you can't
Which is
even hide
interesting for those
salaries.
schools that don't have to divulge that as private
Like
institutions,
Baylor.
what they're going to do.
Yeah, like Baylor. Baylor doesn't have to put out anything publicly about their coaching salaries as a private institution. If the university is doing deals, they have to be public knowledge, or publicly available. And if man, I don't know, man. See, this might be one of those legal gray areas. If it's me and I'm the athlete, I do want to be able to keep my stuff a little private, right? Like, you don't need. I mean, people know I'm making money. Do they need to know how much money I'm making right now? I can't. As it sits here right now, we've heard through our sources what some players have made, but I don't know if I've ever seen anything that said Peyton Thorne got X amount.
Right. I mean, but it's going to happen once you get to the professional level anyway. All of those contracts are publicly disclosed. So if that's the direction that we're headed, then I don't see any reason why you're trying to stop it at the collegiate level. If you're going to be giving these guys these $1 million contracts, hey, open the books up so everybody can see what you're spending.
That's very
and
good
then
point.
There's no mystery around how are you continually getting all of these people? It's like, no, we know you're outspending everybody by $5 million a year. It's exactly how this happens.
Did you see the report about Texas Tech and how much money they spent in the portal? I mean, they had a billionaire draw like $30 million on.
I mean, in multiple sports, like they went and signed the first $1 million athlete to their softball team as a pitcher. Like they're going out and they're dropping bags all over the place to try to get that team or that program, those programs, back into a place of respectability. So, and in this era, that's what it's going to take. You're going to have to find some kind of cash cow that's willing to just throw dollars at this and make that problem go away. The problem with that is it's not sustainable. And this is what Charles Barkley was talking about. It's like, I can give you a check that will get you through the next deadline for this, but how am I supposed to see that? That's not a smart investment. How do I see that money back? Like, that's not, I can invest money in something and see that money back, but I can't just keep giving you checks every single year just because, I love you, but that's not how I keep my money, is by giving you millions upon millions every single year.
Yeah. I mean, for them, I think one of the issues with donating to certain sports under On to Victory is that they didn't get the tax write-off. And so, like, I heard something about this, and I can dig into this for our listeners at a later date. But it was a big roadblock, was not, donating six figures and not getting the write-off was a hindrance to getting, huge donations at times from some of the donors. So, look, man, Auburn's got money. I mean, look, everybody's got a billionaire in their fan base. It's just, does that guy care about sports? Like I don't know if he does it quietly, but I've never heard of Tim Cook making some groundbreaking donation to Auburn athletics. And he definitely has it.
Tim Cook donates a lot of money to Auburn University. It's just not all going to athletics. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this idea that, 130 something institutions of public whatever all of them have some sort of billionaire tied to them is not real, first and foremost. But the ones that do they have billionaires that are willing to spend that kind of money towards athletics? That's not a given. It's not a given that just because you have a wealthy fan base, that wealthy that's how they want to spend their money. Right. They might want to give it back to the college that they went to. If they were in the College of Engineering, I want to give more scholarships to people to go do engineering, not necessarily give money to the football team.
Yeah.
So it's not a given just because you got billionaires in your fan base that's how that money's going to get spent. TK jumps in and says UGA killed their collective and spent a fortune with Learfield Sports. They screwed up. I mean, I would say
they did their collective.
I mean, I don't know anything about this. If they did, then that's interesting, number one. But number two, I don't know that means that they screwed up, because you can always spin a collective back up. But the money you spent towards Learfield Sports, as far as like having an agency or transitioning over to an agency based thing, doesn't mean that you screwed up. It just means that you better be damn sure that agency is getting your guys the right kind of deals, since you can't funnel money to that agency in that way like you could to a collective. But again, this is what I mean about I'm fine with the way that John Cohen and company have handled this, because they've left themselves opportunities to pivot regardless of what direction this went. They always had a way to move in a different direction. Some teams went too far one way. Some schools went too far the other direction. John Cohen basically hedged his bets here and said, we've got enough time to pivot, but I need to make sure I've got enough room to make that pivot. And I think he did it the right way.
Yeah, agreed.
See here. TK jumps back in. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Signing day is what matters. We retained our roster, which was paramount and at the time more important than the 26 class, in my opinion.
I have to agree with this, right? First, roster, they're not getting enough credit for keeping this roster together. They're just not. They're not getting enough credit for keeping all these top 10 athletes that they went out and got in the first couple of years on campus, because, having continuity and having a team with guys who've been in your system multiple years, understand complex concepts, and then adding a quarterback to it that you feel like can be a trigger man for all that. Auburn, last week, people talked about them potentially as the biggest disappointment in the SEC, but also as the potential dark horse in the same sentence. Multiple media members sat down with us last week and said Auburn has a chance to be the most exciting team in college football and also the biggest disappointment. I mean, both sides of the spectrum. So they only get that positive side of it because they kept the roster together, and then they went out and added even more pieces to that. There's a cost to maintaining your roster. I'm telling you, it was already with the portal rules. You re-recruiting your roster gets harder because the athlete had more negotiating power, being able to say, "I'm a bounce, and I don't have to sit out a year, so I've got options." Well, now they can bounce, and they can bounce with a bunch of money.
Right.
So, yeah, it was always going to be about what Auburn is going to do on the field this year. This year has to be a success. Man, they cannot afford a lukewarm 7-5 season. It was the only thing that Hugh Freeze said during our one-on-one interview that I disagreed with 100%. When he said it depends on how you win 7-5, I'm like, I don't know. I think you could have said that last year. I don't think that 7-5 is palatable this year, no matter how.
I don't actually. I do agree with him. Like, it does depend on how. Like, I don't think the number by itself is it. I think if you get screwed in a game that keeps you outside of that 8th win, or you have a bunch of injuries in the season that make that 8th win harder to get, I think that does matter. But if everything is status quo and you just are out there making bad decisions as a coach, or you picked the wrong quarterback and stuck with him too long, I think that means that you have to get to 8 wins or bust, right? But I do think that it matters. I don't think, for me, 6 wins is where you get to that place of, like, I don't know, with the depth of talent that you have, I don't know that it's ever acceptable, regardless of how the ball bounces, that 6 wins is going to be the place that you should be with this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on 6. 7 is still a little murky for me with this.
It is. I think I agree that it's murky.
It's very murky with me with this schedule, and I think that it's good. I mean, some of the situations where you could explain away 7-5 feel like extreme outliers with the schedule. Like,
for sure.
I don't think we disagree on this. I'm like, I don't want to hear 7-5 in year 3, right? Like, I mean, it may seem like a big jump to talk about 8 or 9 wins, and then Brooks was kind of teasing me about like, oh, why not undefeated? No. This is always the conversation we were supposed to be having in year 3. Just because it didn't go the way they wanted to in year 2, it doesn't reset those expectations. Look, McPherson, nobody wants to hear this, but what an unlucky break for Auburn.
Right.
With McPherson that cost you a couple of games. And it's hard to quantify this in stats, but he was absolutely right. Because of the McPherson situation and the lack of trust in the kicking game, they were doing things offensively they wouldn't normally do. And those were tough calls to make. And they didn't work out more often than not. And it cost them a couple of football games that had they won those games, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think if you had 7-5 last year, people are definitely tabbing Auburn as a playoff team.
Yeah, and to the point that you're making with that, if Auburn wins 7 games last year, 7 games again this year would feel disappointing. So like resetting the expectations is, if you're not resetting those expectations, 7 this year, absolutely, like that would feel like running in place. And that's not ever where you really want to be as a program, where you're year over year in mediocrity. You want to be able to continue to improve. The only reason why I would be more inclined to say I can see it getting there is because of how bad it's been so far on the field. You can at least sell it as progress, even if it is like quasi progress, because you really went backwards before you went forward. So you really didn't take any steps forward. You just kind of got back to where you should have been. But again, I think, even though they are fringe scenarios that would make them acceptable, these scenarios exist. But to your point, that's not where you want to bank on being as a place of safety. You want to be much further along than 7 wins this season. 8 wins, I think, is the place where, again, when you're looking at the schedule, puts you in a place where you're having a realistic conversation about progress. If you're at 7 wins, you're not having a real conversation about any level of progress. You're having a conversation about maintaining, and I don't know that gets you where you need to be for retention purposes or with new player acquisition purposes.
Yeah, he's gonna have a lot of tough questions to answer that are gonna get. It's gonna get harder for John Cohen to go in front of the podium at 7-5 next year and defend what this coach is doing, because likely coaching cost you a game. Maybe you have some unlucky bounces of the football, but the culmination, the totality of all that is on Hugh Freeze. And if you're John Cohen, there's only so many lifelines you can give him.
Right.
In talking about hey, well, we had this happen and we had that happen. At some point, you have to just remove all the excuses and say, you got to go win football games. We've given you the checkbook. You picked the athletes. You've gotten almost unlimited support and resources to build the program in your vision. And you've done that. So if Jackson Arnold isn't the guy, hard to blame Jackson at this point. If Deuce isn't the guy, hard to blame Deuce at this point. Right? These are the guys you picked. Go find a way to win football games with those guys. So, it kind of just circling back on that conversation we had about building a pipeline and how Auburn has not really done that. Now's the time to start, man. Now's the time to build a stable of QBs as a QB guy. Josh Pate said this last week to me. He said, you can be bad. No, it's Jake Crane said this. He said, you can be bad at the things you're bad at, but you can't be bad at the things that you're supposed to be good at. If you are a QB guy, man, QBs need to be thriving under you, not struggling. And I think that's what we need to see this year. If Jackson Arnold thrives under Hugh Freeze, with what I expect from this defense, I don't think there's a way Auburn doesn't win 8 games outside of some really fluky, anomalous stuff that if you're just that unlucky, fire him anyway because he's just bad luck. Might be his fault, bro. You just bad luck at that point. So I agree with Jake, man. Like I want to see him be good at the thing that he professed to be good at, which is QB development.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Ants jumps in. Ike, both Bama and UGA killed it. Speaking of their NIL collectives.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So it will be very interesting to see in light of this how they and so again, I have to say this. Well, I've said it, but I need to reiterate it. there are teams and universities and programs that are going to have a much tougher time pivoting than Auburn will in light of this new information, which is why it made sense to move with caution until you had all information necessary. I don't know that it made a lot of sense to jump out there too early in the way that a lot of these folks did. And sure, it gave you a small advantage in the short term. It's like a runner that's in like the 800 and they jump out initially like they're running the 100 and they're off to this amazing sprint to begin with. You still have to finish the race ahead though. Yep. And okay, great. You got out of the gate wonderfully. But if down the back stretch you don't have enough left to be able to make that final turn towards the home, you're not going to finish strong. I think Auburn left themselves enough room for that final kick to be able to finish strong. Now, whether they finish with a gold medal or even on the medal stand, I think is kind of irrelevant. It's just you don't want to be in last place like where you are right now. They've got enough left in the tank, I think, to be able to finish strong and potentially medal here. But there's a lot of teams that have not left themselves enough to be able to do that. And they're going to find themselves struggling down the back stretch here more than Auburn is. And I don't know that some teams even had the ability, even if they had jumped out early, to maintain it. You know, teams like Georgia, like Bama, they probably do have another kick left in them to be able to do this kind of stuff, but they were always going to be out there in the front. So, like, that's not a surprise. They've always been up front. They were always going to be up front. But Auburn left himself enough room to finish strong, and now is the time to say, all right, cool, we can kick in on the back half of this and finish respectably in this race, and that's what they're going to have to figure out how to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we've only got about 10 minutes left here. Our poll is about to close. We are at 50% of the 86 votes we have right now, still saying 11 to 15 is the respectable place for Auburn to be able to finish in this recruiting cycle, and they'd be fine with that. I'd be interested to see how this poll would do outside of our chat, because I don't think that there's as many level-headed people outside of the chat. Like in second place here, we're tied for second place, is 16 to 25 and 6 to 10. Only 3% of people are saying top 5 is where you want or you think is acceptable for Auburn to finish. So I think that is interesting to see what it's like. Again, we got 89 votes here. I'll leave it open for another 3 minutes before I close this poll.
Go vote in the poll, guys. We need the data.
Yeah, 165 of you guys in here. That means just over half. So we need the other half of y'all that are listening from afar to walk back towards your computer or device and click an answer here on this poll so that we can see kind of how people are. Just because we were in the neighborhood of the conversation, you were talking about kind of the nature of the playoff situation, and maybe we'll do a different topic on this for another day to kind of talk about this more in depth. But the whole situation about whether or not what has been happening, I think, routinely at these media days from both the Big 12 now and the Big 10 is they're keeping the SEC's name in their mouth. Number one, like, calm down. I get it, but trying to act as if the SEC is not the big dog when every metric says otherwise. The Big Ten touting, of course, that they've won the last 2 national championships, so the balance of power is now shifted towards them, according to them. But this conversation around strength of schedule has manifested in this idea that the SEC is top heavy because only 6 teams in like the last 25 years have won the SEC. And there are... Yeah. Okay. And there's, at the time, what we've gone from 14 to 16, or actually, I think 12 to 16 in that amount of time. But when you go and you look at most of these other conferences, they tell the exact same story. There isn't some huge parity in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State have dominated that conference with a sprinkle of Wisconsin in there for like the last 25 years. So like this idea that the SEC is more top heavy than anything, I think number one is absolutely untrue. But number two, it means that the SEC is just as top heavy as every other conference. So what are you actually trying to say? I don't know that I even understand the purpose of that being a part of this conversation. And then when you go into the conversation about, well, because it was actually the head coach for Indiana who was saying that they were ending their deal to do a home and home. I forgot what team it was outside of the conference, because he said he wants his Signetti, the guy, it's the coach there. He said he wanted his schedule to look more like an SEC schedule. So they're adding some cupcakes to that schedule instead of another team outside of the conference. But again, like, if you're Greg Sankey, and we mentioned this earlier, why do I make it more if strength of schedule is not going to be paramount in the minds of the voters for the college football playoff, why do I need to make my schedule more difficult?
Yeah,
Thank
right.
you, Marcus. It was Virginia. They had the home and home schedule.
Yeah. Indiana, canceled his home and home versus Virginia. Essentially saying, like, that if the SEC doesn't have to play these games, then why should we? The answer to that is simple: because you are Indiana.
Right.
Right.
And look at who Indiana played last year on their way to this miraculous season. They played a bunch of nobodies. They played a bunch of teams that would get beat up no matter what conference they were in. And now they're trying to act as if which again, interconference matchups are always going to be difficult, but let's not act as if they're more difficult in other places than they are in the SEC.
Yeah, they were already.
The level of talent you face on a week-to-week basis is just not the same.
In the last 5 years, Indiana, 0 P4 opponents, right? Non-conference. 0 road games against P4 opponents in the non-conference. They scheduled 4 FCS opponents, and only 2 of their 7 FBS opponents had winning records in 2024. To your point about their schedule being weak already. So, like, you're taking this off the schedule, but you already were playing a weak schedule. See, the advantage that the SEC has, and this is the beauty of what Greg Sankey and Mike Sly before him built, is that you built up the aura around the Auburns, the LSUs, the Alabamas, and the schools that you've brought in, all but Missouri, have done nothing but add to that, right? And even Missouri has been to a conference title game a couple times since they entered the SEC. So it's not as top heavy as they make it sound like it is. But if you look at teams that have won the SEC since like 2000, I think like Auburn has 3, LSU has 5, Bama has a bunch. I think Georgia has
a bunch.
3.
LSU has like 3.
Florida has 3.
Florida has like 3. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think I got the Georgia number wrong. Georgia may have like 5, but it's a good mix of teams. And of the teams that I just named, of those 5, all of them have won national titles.
Right.
Auburn, LSU, Florida, Bama, Georgia, all have won national titles. That's an incredible amount of parity for a conference like the SEC. But who's matching that? I mean, talk about the Big Ten. Since 2013, the only teams not named Michigan or Ohio State to win that conference were Michigan State and Penn State. Had one lone one in 2016. Yeah, Wisconsin was like 2012. It's been, that was the last time they won like 3 straight from 2010 to 2012. But that conference has been dominated by 2 teams forever.
Right.
And so if you take the Big Ten and the SEC off the table, where is all this competitive football that's being played elsewhere that we're missing?
Right. Like, so let's go to the other power conferences, right? Let's go to the ACC. Clemson dominated that conference for a long time. Before that, it was Florida State for a long time. Before that, it was Miami. There's not this, any team could win it every year type of thing. You go to the Big 12. Before they came to the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma were running that conference. What are we saying? The Pac-12, who cares who won the Pac-12? Nobody cares who won the Pac-12. So it's a nonsensical conversation to have about, well, the SEC is top heavy. Every conference is top heavy because every conference is going to have the same guys that are going to have the same coaches that are dominating. They're going to have the same level of boosters who are willing to spend. That conversation has not changed for decades.
Yeah.
Why are we pretending like the SEC is somehow different from everybody else and having the same few people? That's kind of the nature of having blue bloods in your conference. You're going to have the same couple of people who are perennially at the top of the conference.
Since 2012 or 2013, right? Pretty much just been Florida State and Clemson in the ACC, with Pittsburgh having the lone outlier championship in 2021. They weirdly won that conference that year. Now we're on to the Big 12, right? Again, you're asking where are all these champions that all this parity that these other conferences have? In the Big 12, obviously Arizona State was last year, but that's in an expanded Big 12. When did Texas and Oklahoma and Oklahoma join the conference?
Last year was
last
the
year.
first
It was last
yeah.
last year was so 2024 was the first year, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, you had a couple by Baylor. They had a split in 2014 with Baylor and TCU. How does that work?
Yeah, because they're a garbage conference.
Yeah, Baylor, RG3's Baylor, essentially in 2013, I think that was. And then you had 6 straight conference titles by Oklahoma from 2015 to 2020. You had Baylor again in 2021, Kansas State in 2022, Texas last year, and then Arizona State last year. So they had a little bit of parity over the last 4 years.
But not any more than the SEC.
Yeah, that's correct.
What conference had more than 5 teams that have been champions in the last 25 years? None of them.
None of them. Yeah. It was a 5, essentially a different champion in the Big 12 every year for the last 5 years. But also, you removed 2 teams from that equation last year
that were helping dominate that conference.
Correct. Yeah. So, like, if they had stayed in the conference, Texas is probably the champion of the Big 12 again last year, right? Like, it's just so it's kind of pretend parity that they have on that side. I did not understand.
And you added a bunch of weak teams to the, like, it's not like you went and got some other powerhouses to replace Texas and Oklahoma. You went and got a bunch of weak teams. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's a nonsensical conversation. And I get it. It's easy to throw stones at the SEC because the SEC has been so dominant for so long.
And loud about it. For sure.
But wouldn't you be if you? I'm saying wouldn't you be as if I'm not a part of the people being loud? But like, don't we deserve to be loud about it?
I agree with you. Look, our friend Chris Marler put out a graphic with future schedules, comparing them to Indiana. This was fantastic stuff by Chris. Follow him on Twitter, Vern_Funquist. With Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, and Texas, and he just kind of outlined their non-conference opponents. As much as I hate them, but from 2025 to 2034, Alabama will play at least 2 P4 non-cons every year for the next 9 years. On that list, Oklahoma State, Georgia Tech, Arizona, West Virginia, Florida State, Boston College, Minnesota, Virginia Tech, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. That's a hell of a list of schools, man. Georgia will play at least 2 P4 non-cons from 2026 to 2034. They've got NC State, Clemson, Florida State, Ohio State, Georgia Tech, Louisville on this schedule. Florida will play at least 2 for the next 8 years. Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, Colorado, Arizona State, UCF. I don't understand this argument.
It's a silly argument.
Yeah. People get bent out of shape about playing FCS opponents in November. And okay, I kind of get it, but I don't
get it at all, actually.
It's smart. I'm not loading up my November schedule with P4 opponents just because if I'm Alabama, I got to end my year with Auburn, potentially on the road. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
every other
I mean,
year.
especially
Why?
if you're talking about expanding postseason. Like, why do I want to continue? Like, I need a break at some time if I'm actually having postseason aspirations, because we have to figure out how to get our team healthy going into that portion of the season.
Yeah. There's no reason to just play these games. And if you have playoff aspirations, you've got a ton of extra football that you have to play. And December, I mean, this all has to be part of the discussion of the account. There's an account on Twitter I called like SEC bias exposed or something, and he was circulating this graphic about, essentially non-conference weak FCS opponents in the SEC. But the graphic was disingenuous. It was leaving off the P4 opponents that those teams schedule every year, and he was like, "See, this is my point. Y'all want extra credit for blah blah blah." No. You're posting this without contents to make it seem as if they're not playing those games, and these are the only games that are being played, right? Like that was the point, and so the propaganda and the rhetoric around this will never end. But what I would point to for all the people who say, "Oh, but you guys didn't win it last year," three teams got in. 3 teams from the conference got in, and much to their chagrin, dude, like 3 more teams could have got in, and they blew it. I'm okay with the fact that they didn't make it because they had to. Like, if you're Ole Miss, you beat Georgia, just don't lose to Kentucky, and you're in the playoff.
Right.
Inexplicable loss, and they deserve to be left out. South Carolina, they just need to handle business in one more game, and they're in. Missouri, same thing. You win 10 with one of the best wide receiver QB combos in the country, you're in. Alabama, no excuses, man. They should have been in.
Yeah. They lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma last year.
Yeah, don't lose to Vandy. You're in the playoff. So they may hate this argument, but it's only going to get worse because this year, if those teams handle business, you're going to be staring at 5 SEC teams in this playoff. Say what you want about Auburn, but they have a very, very clear path to a 12-team playoff.
Right.
If they win 10 games, it's not even going to be an argument. They're going to be in.
Yeah.
Florida, with some of the hardest schedules we've ever seen, they win 10, they're in. I think the precedent was set. 9, it's going to be really, really hard to
you're going to need some help at 9.
Yeah, to advocate for a middle-of-the-pack 9-win SEC team without divisions, like making a playoff over the second best, the runner-up of the Big 12. Let me put it that way. Right? Like I think that's a fair argument. But man, let me tell you something. I have a feeling this year there's going to be a lot of crying from everybody outside the SEC about how many teams get into this playoff. They dodged the bullet last year with Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, and South Carolina not taking care of business. But this year, I promise you, Ike, Texas and Georgia will be in. Right? There'll be a third team in the SEC of the Tennessee variety that will make it in. So SEC's going to 3-3 in this thing. The next 2 could there are like 8 teams that could be the next 2.
Yeah. I mean, you already had, like you said, 3 or 4 on the fringe last year.
Yeah. 1,
if not 2 of those teams is going to handle business this year to put you in a position where you will get a 4th. And then if it's that close, then that 5th is looming on the horizon as well.
I agree. Look, man, I don't know how to tell people, but a 10-win Auburn's getting in, period. 2017, Auburn would have been in this playoff. Hey, love it or hate it. 2017 Auburn would have been in easily. It would not even been a discussion. Right now, as it stands, I don't think Missouri gets in. Like, I don't think they get in. We talked about the media poll. We talked about on our Sunday segment. And where everybody got voted. Auburn got picked 11th. 11th. That's actually prime position to sneak in the back end of the playoff from the SEC. That's great. With this schedule, I'm telling you, they come out of that first 6-game stretch 4-2, everyone's going to be talking about Auburn being a fringe playoff team. And you handle business against Missouri at home. You go on the road versus Arkansas. You handle business. You beat a Kentucky team that you already beat last year. You scrubbed them last year with all the dysfunction that you had. Jarquez Hunter, no Jarquez Hunter, but somebody should step up, right? You beat Vanderbilt because they're Vanderbilt. They may have beat you last year, but I'll tell you, if I were a completely unbiased third-party onlooker, if I look at how Auburn lost to Vanderbilt and how Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, I'm way more worried about how Alabama lost to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Auburn, you gave up 17 points and you lost because you just were dysfunctional on offense, and that was true for just about every game you played in conference last year. If you're Alabama, you gave up like 40 points to Vanderbilt. And the way they had to get it with Diego Pavia scrambling all over the place, and I'd be way more worried about that. So I think Auburn chalks that dub this year. It's so hard not to bug when you look at the schedule and then you think about how they lost some of these games last year. Yes, you lost to Vanderbilt. I think the final score was 17-7. God, that was such a winnable game.
Yeah.
And if they could have just done to Vanderbilt what they did to Kentucky, you make a bowl game. So the margin is so razor thin for Auburn, and I feel like this could be, if you want Hugh Freeze to stay at Auburn, if you want him to continue as the coach, I'm telling you, this year is going to set the stage for whether Auburn hunkers down with Hugh Freeze as their coach of the future or goes back to the wishing well, searching for the next great Auburn coach. This year is so pivotal. He has got to get it done this year. And yeah, I you know what doesn't help him is a ninth conference game for no reason.
Right.
He doesn't need it. That's the beauty of what Greg Sankey has built is that your teams don't need that extra game. They automatically get the benefit of the doubt because of conference association. Love it or hate it, that is what good branding is.
Yeah, and then like you said, they're also taking the challenge of an additional P4 game outside of the conference. So if I'm going to play 9 Power 4 games anyway, I don't. And this idea that somehow it becomes more level if everybody's playing the same number of conference games is bogus too, because every conference isn't made equal. You're telling me 9 Big 12 games is equivalent to 9 SEC 9 SEC games? No, it's not.
No.
9 games in the ACC is the same as 9 games in the SEC? No, it's not. Stop.
No. I will say this, and this, when we had divisions, it was even worse if you were in the SEC West.
Right,
because of who you had hard-coded into your schedule. Like, if you look at Auburn's schedule, and then you look at we could use the top 10 in recruiting as a basis for who they're going up against, I think. Kind of makes sense in this conversation. So let's talk about that for a second, right? If you look at the top 10 in recruiting right now, 2026 recruiting.
While you're looking that up, poll is closed here, and Auburn is by everyone's metric here, 11 to 15 is where Auburn should finish to be okay. 113 votes in. 6 to 10 was second place at 11-15 was at 53%, by the way. So the vast majority there. So yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, let me tell you who's in the 11 to 15 range right now. Florida State at 15, Florida at 14, Tennessee at 13, Clemson at 12, Michigan at 11. That's great company to be in.
Yeah,
right now. So if they finish there, I agree with everyone who voted 11 to 15. That's a completely reasonable expectation that still sets your program up for the future. But my point about the schedule was this: in a normal SEC West schedule, right now in recruiting, Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama, LSU, and Texas are in the top 10 in recruiting right now. Georgia 2, Texas A&M 3, Bama 4, Texas 6, LSU 8. Ike, on an SEC West schedule, a normal SEC West schedule, you play 4 of those teams.
Right.
You play 4 of the 4 top 10 teams in recruiting, so they have the talent to wash you if you're not recruiting well. I mean, I don't like. Why would I need to go out and schedule another game? It's a vanity metric, man. There's no reason to do that. I already got to play the guy, because if you want to talk about the rankings, okay, this is why I used recruiting, because we're talking about the talent that these teams have. It's not really debatable. These are some of the most talented programs in the country, and you have them hard-coded into your schedule every single year. I'm not going out and scheduling another game just to prove. I have to prove to you. I've proven it. I'm playing these guys every year.
Right. And then 9 times out of 10, because you have Georgia on your schedule in the regular season and they're winning 80% of the ones in the East, you're going to have to see them again in the SEC championship game. Like, no, I'm not we're not doing this. We're just not.
Yeah, that's why I say the schedule is a gift, because you get to get rid of LSU and Ole Miss, and then you get Vanderbilt and Kentucky. So, on average, like I said, those are, by composite star, much less talented teams to have to play. And it's the type of schedule that Georgia sees year in and year out when we had divisions in the East. They had Vanderbilt and Kentucky on their schedule every year.
Right.
Now Auburn gets a chance at that. So you get a little bit of a reprieve, but make no mistake, as we start to go through the rotations, you know who's going to hop back on there? It's going to be Florida. It's going to be LSU. It's going to be one of these schools that are recruiting
Texas.
Powerhouse. Yeah, Texas. Yeah, come on. And even though you don't have Texas on the schedule, in an SEC West type situation, you may potentially have to see them in the SEC championship game before it's all said and done. So yeah, you may still have to see the best team from that other side of the conference. It's just, these people are silly, man. I'm sorry. Like, if you don't like that, if you think the rankings are biased, I would challenge you to go look at who is in the top 15 in recruiting, and then ask yourself, how many of these teams does my school play every year?
Right.
Or have the potential to play? If you're Auburn, right, I mentioned the top 15 in recruiting, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams you could potentially see as just a part of your normal schedule. And then just outside that, Ole Miss right on the other side of that, South Carolina right on the other side of that. This is last year's rankings. Missouri right on the other side of that. Come on, man. This is crazy. This is why people say,
like I said, it's a nonsensical conversation, and it's sour grapes from conferences that can't figure out how to up their conference superiority, and so they have to take shots at what the SEC has put together.
They got bad leadership, because they have bad leadership. The guy who runs the pack, come on, man, that guy sucks.
Yeah,
he's a terrible businessman. They had terrible. Remember that time we were looking for a pack?
Yeah, their TV deal was awful.
Trying to find their games were awful, man. Those are the deals that they're making. It's your conference leadership. If you hate that the SEC is where they're at right now, it's because not everybody can have Greg Sankey and Mike Slive before him. Mike Slive was ingenious. He was the one who brought back the SEC championship game in 91?
Yeah.
Every other conference followed suit after that. You've been setting trends if you're the SEC now for 4 decades. I don't want to hear it, man. Get better leadership in your conference, man. And then the Big Ten, they went and they added a bunch of schools that geographically make absolutely no effing sense.
No.
Right? I'm sorry. Oregon is a good program, but them in the Big Ten makes no sense.
Yeah, them, USC, UCLA.
What are we doing here, man? We get it. You needed some solid programs with some tradition and some names that would boost your brand.
and you couldn't find them in your geography, so you had to go pull them from somewhere else. Now, the SEC didn't have that problem. They could actually just go knock next door and find more talented teams to be able to pull into there. And they could have been worse, right? Like they could have grabbed a Clemson. They could have went and gotten a Miami,
Florida
right?
State.
Like,
yeah, right. Yeah, that's fact.
They still had a bunch of teams to choose from to make this make sense for them geographically. You in the ACC didn't have that option, right? The ACC had to go grab freaking Cal and some, but like there's just a bunch of nonsense.
Crazy. The Atlantic Coast Conference took Cal.
Right. Now they're the All Coast Conference. Right.
Oh my God. Like I was like, that makes absolutely zero sense. What was the defunct? They were primarily a basketball conference. UConn was like the Big East.
Big East, yeah.
Yeah. Just all the failed leadership in some of these. Your leadership has failed you. If you hate the SEC, that's because your conference leadership failed you. And they weren't forward thinking, and they did not think through the TV deals, and they didn't understand the branding and the marketing. And when people say, it's weird to me that you guys root for your conference in a way, and I'm like, no, I think SEC fans understand something very simple. To be the best, you have to beat the best, which it means I need you to be the best when we play you. It does not serve Auburn to beat up on a down Bama. And whether Auburn fans like it or not, right? I mean, I'd be okay if they lost every game from now to the end of the time. And I particularly love that stretch where they hired 3 coaches in one offseason, and we were holding up thumbs, and Auburn had beat Alabama 6 straight, I think. I mean, while we were in school, we only saw Auburn lose 1 Iron Bowl, I think.
I didn't see any.
2001. Fair enough. But I'll tell you, it's better for college football and for Auburn, like, when both those teams are good. And SEC fans understand that. They do. It's not as vitriolic at basketball as it is at football, but, it was the same thing. They all came together come conference time, and seeing 9 teams from the same conference in the Sweet 16 is crazy, Ike. We were there watching it. I ran into Commissioner Sankey, and he was like, we'll get 9 in. I said, you're crazy. No way. Somebody's going to mess it up. He said, no, we'll get 9 in. Then he tweeted out after, I had a great conversation with a member of the media about getting 9 in, and the SEC put out this whole graphic. They get it.
Yeah.
They understand it. And so now the luxury is I don't need my institutions to play some meaningless game that's just going to knock them out of the playoff talk. They can play 8 conference game and schedule a couple of FCS opponents and get 1 good P4 game in out of conference. For Auburn, it's Baylor. That's a great game. Baylor's going to be a tough team. Sawyer Robinson can sling it, man.
Yeah.
He's going to be really, really good this year, and they're going to contend for the Big 12. So I don't like, you got that. Almost every SEC team has a game like that on their schedule. Now, you don't always know how good these teams are going to be when you schedule these games, because I will make that clear. When Auburn scheduled Cal, there was no way to know where Cal's program was going to be at when the game was actually going to be played.
Right.
I think a home and home is being worked on with Notre Dame. Looks good on paper now. Could be absolute crap game by 2030, I think, when they're trying to play that game. But they do try, and the ADs do want that. I think they understand. I think Cohen understands the significance of scheduling these games we've never seen before. He wants all that to happen on his watch. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, because it's about the TV revenue, and again, that's there's a reason why he gets up at SEC Media Days and he touts the number or the percentage of television watchers that are happening with games involving SEC teams, because he understands the brand that he's putting out there and the types of competitions that he's making sure get the kind of television time that they need to be able to enhance his ability to continue to make money, especially when we're in this world of rev share. The SEC is going to continue to figure out how to be the cash cow around here.
Yeah. He's done a great job. Like I said, everyone arguing against it is pretty much just saying, I hate that my conference leadership isn't as good as Greg Sankey.
Yeah.
He walks
at the
around
end of the day, it's sour grapes about Your conference sucks, and we have to have something to complain about. So let's complain. They don't play enough of their own guys. We play enough of our own guys. Your conference just stinks.
Yeah. No amount of crying about the schedule is going to change the fact that the talent still resides in the SEC. Follow the talent is what I like to say. You follow the talent. Follow the NFL draft. Follow the recruiting rankings, man. Like, the talent resides in the conference. I think they broke another record for players drafted in this last NFL draft from the conference. It's crazy. The development is happening in the SEC, and it's not that there's no development happening outside the SEC, but it's hard to argue when you look at who's getting drafted, and you're thinking, oh man, do you remember? I think it was the 2013 Alabama LSU game. They were calling it the game of the century.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about those two schools necessarily that year. I think it was 2011. It was about the amount. They said there were like 22 draft picks on the field at one point.
Right.
Everybody on both sides of the football. I think it was Bama on defense and LSU on offense. And the guy came on and said, everybody here is going to get drafted. Everybody on the field right now is going to be drafted. Insane thing to think about. But they had so many draft picks between those two teams that it was unconscionable. Auburn hasn't been holding up their end of the bargain in terms of the draft. But now that they're recruiting at a high level, you're going to start to see that turn. When you get a kid like Cam Coleman in your pipeline, I'm telling you already, he's already a first-round draft pick. There is a universal recognition that his talent is next level. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when we got our preseason all-SEC ballots, the true sophomore who had only 600 yards receiving last year got voted first-team all-SEC. That's how good he is.
Right.
There are defensive coordinators right now losing sleep over game planning for how to stop Cam Coleman. And in the SEC, what you have is you have a collection of those types of players that it's really hard to ignore. So you have to follow the talent. Just look at where the players are getting drafted, man. Look at who's putting the most in the NFL. Who's putting the most on these people? Who's producing Heismans? It's the SEC, man.
And again, there are other conferences that can claim that for one or two teams. But again, this idea that the SEC is more top heavy than other conferences is just nonsensical.
5 national champions, different national champions since 2000 is actually nuts, man. Right?
Yeah. And again, name another conference that can say that. There isn't one.
Yeah. Five national champions in football, like since 2000. First of all, they never really got a chance because the SEC was dominating the national championship game, right?
And we're only mentioning the ones the SEC won, not the ones they participated in.
Right, correct. Yeah, there weren't any losses until Alabama lost to Clemson, I think.
Yeah, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan are upset the party a couple of times in there, but it's been SEC dominated for the most part. So
wait, who did Michigan? Michigan didn't play an SEC team though, right?
No. Well, so Michigan won 2 years ago. Remember with Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. Yeah, they didn't have to play an SEC team to get the championship though.
They beat Bama in the
playoff.
In the playoff game. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I was trying to think. I was like, when the SEC gets there, I think the only times they've actually lost one and got there was to each other.
And Clemson,
yeah. So 2017.
Well, Ohio State beat somebody one year. Bama? I forgot who it was Ohio State played in that championship. But yeah, I mean, again, for the most part, it's been dominated by the SEC. Either they were the champion or they were the runner-up for I don't even know what the number is, but I'd wager to say in the last 25 years, it was probably something like 20 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so crazy.
Us
It
in Florida
started.
State, Mike just said, yeah,
Oh, Florida State. Yeah,
2013. Yeah.
yeah. It's
But
funny how
again,
we
it's
block out that
it's either
memory.
the SEC or the SEC's playing for it in like 20 of the last 25 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I get it. It's Georgia and Bama a lot of those times, but it hasn't just been Georgia and Bama. So let's not act as if the SEC is more
Well,
top
Georgia was
heavy.
just a recently thing, right? Like, I mean, it was. They had a
I mean, it was
shot at it
mostly,
some years.
yeah, it was mostly Bama and actually LSU for a minute there, for a couple of those. So, but still, it's been a lot of Auburn. I mean, it's been a lot of other teams, but the SEC has been involved.
Oh man, at a crazy rate, right? Like, so since 2000, LSU got it kicked off in 2003. And it depends on how you want to look at 2004, like, because technically there is no champion, right? Like, USC vacated and Auburn went undefeated. So I don't know if you want to toss that one on Auburn's slate, but there was Vince
Young.
Vince Young, 2005 Texas, and then after that it was an insane run. So you had Florida, LSU, Florida, Bama, Auburn, Bama. That's 2006 to 2012. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight championships. They broke it up with Florida State. That was the last year of the BCS. Then Ohio State, they beat Oregon in 2014. I remember that game. And then you had Bama, Clemson. So they were trading it off from 2015 to 2018. And then LSU. And then Alabama. And then Georgia twice. Then Michigan, and then Ohio State finally last year. I mean, that's a lot of championships, man. Like, that's actually insane, because you had 4 straight by 3 different schools from 2019 to 2022. That's mainly why I think this argument is silly, right? Like, you just recently had 4 straight championships by 3 different schools from the conference, and only one of those was Bama. So the whole it's Alabama, it's just Alabama. It's never been just Alabama. They had the Nick Saban factor, but make no mistake, in the BCS era, a lot of those teams that were SEC championship runner-ups in a playoff, like in a true playoff scenario, they would have got in, and a lot of them would have probably won it.
Right.
I'm sorry, there were some very, very good teams in there that were runners up in some of those years that definitely would have gotten that playoff and caused havoc.
Yeah, you got to think about like that Georgia team that came and curb stomped us. Like, they'd have been in there making some people pay. Yeah, there's plenty of years where if there was a playoff involved, it would have looked a lot sadder for these other conferences.
In 2012, when Alabama beat the shit out of Notre Dame for that championship, I remember seeing this graphic. Man, I meant to send it to you. Where it was the SEC championship game, and they had this little pathetic looking, what do you call it? Their little Irish dude, like the gnome or whatever.
Mhm.
And it had this like roided out Alabama elephant with this roided out bulldog, and they were getting ready to box. And they looked back, and the graphic said, "One of us will be right with you." They were powerhouses that year. Whoever won that game was going to beat the crap out of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. That game was over at halftime. It was embarrassing. Brian Kelly was the coach of that Notre Dame team.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, I got to ask you a question on camera about expectations for the season. And I saw a graphic that SEC Unfiltered put out about coaches on the hot seat. And they had Hugh Freeze on the scalding hot seat for this year. But I got to tell you, man, I don't know why we're not talking about Brian Kelly kind of being on the hot seat here. If this
I mean, I think because of what LSU is, then it's a fair conversation. I think the fairer conversation is I don't know that the seat is as hot as that graphic suggests for Hugh Freeze.
Because
Because I think that there's enough wiggle room there. To your point, I don't know that Hugh Freeze is on a hotter seat than a guy like Brian Kelly is, or even a guy like Mark Stoops. So I don't know.
Yeah. Like, is Venables on the hot seat this year? I think he's hot seat worthy.
Maybe.
You know, I know he had a tough. He had Hugh Freeze and Venables scorching. He had Sam Pittman as Dead Man Walking. That's the hottest. Dead Man Walking. Warm were Billy Napier and Mark Stoops. Needs a good season. Jeff Lebby, Kalen DeBoer, and Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly could have been warm.
Yeah, I think Brian Kelly's probably one tier too high. Jeff Levy probably is. Like, I think he's fine. It's just he's just in his second season. Like, I don't know why that it's not as if Mississippi State is some perennial powerhouse. So I don't know that they expect. I mean, he can't have as bad a season as he had last year with no SEC wins, but he doesn't need a good season. He just needs to win 1 or 2 SEC games and make people believe, oh, we're moving in the right direction. So I don't know about all that. I think if he gets to 5 wins, I mean, excuse me, to 6 wins, if he gets bowl eligible, that's a good season for them.
Yeah. The untouchable category was Kirby Smart, obviously, Steve Sarkisian, Eli Drinkwitz. Untouchable?
I mean, Missouri people love him, so.
Yeah, okay, all right. And Lane Kiffin.
Ole Miss people love him.
Yeah, I'm like,
I don't know that Lane loves him back, but
I think Lane loves Lane. But my thing with I was asked about the biggest potential disappointment in the SEC last week, and I think it's Ole Miss, man. Honestly, I know I have got a healthy hate for them, but I'm telling you, the fact that they didn't make the playoffs last year to me in a year where they beat Georgia is unforgivable. Like, that loss to Kentucky, unforgivable. You had it, man. You had a playoff spot locked in, and you still found a way to blow it with that schedule. The first 6 games, we looked at their schedule when we were doing our season preview for teams, and I said, man, they should have been 6-0 to start that schedule. But somehow you beat Georgia, and then the Ole Miss LSU game, probably one of the better games in the conference. That one went to overtime. Nussmeier came through at the end. But I just at what point do you say, all right, Lane Kiffin is a good coach, but he's not going to take us to the promised land? Right.
You probably should have said it with the minute you hired him, but whatever.
I think that this is where Georgia was at when they moved on from Mark Richt.
Yeah.
Clearly a good coach, but he had enough time to get them to the promised land, and he didn't. So they moved on, and it worked out for them down the road. I just wonder if Ole Miss is ever going to get there with Lane Kiffin, where, yes, he produces good results for the most part, but always, no matter how much lower you lower the bar, he finds a way to come, to go under.
Yeah, he's a limbo expert.
For sure. Limbo coaching. I like that. Coin that one. Put it on a t-shirt. Put it in the store. Lane Kiffin doing the limbo, man.
Limbo Lane. Okay, that's what I'm gonna start calling him from now on. Limbo Lane.
Limbo Lane. Okay. You heard this. Social media hashtag Limbo Lane right now. Make sure you give Ike the credit.
For sure. All right. Well, we got to get out of here, man. Good conversation around all of these things. All of you other conferences, stop whining. We'll be back to talk more about this because the Big Ten feels like they're the best conference in the nation. The SEC will definitely have some things to say about that. But we have the best content in the nation. Mike, do you tell people how they can support that?
You guys know the deal. Hit that join button. $5.99 a month will get you there. We were on the road all week last week at SEC Media Days. If you didn't see some of that content, we sat down with almost every big name in SEC media, as well as some folks from our own program. So if you want to see Ike's interview with Connor Liu, I think that was the first time I've actually heard him speak, Ike, when he talked to you. We've got that up on the channel. Our sit down with Hugh Freeze. Just so much great content that's made possible by your financial support. So hit that join button to help us grow our community. I want to thank our title sponsor, the Rage Room. You guys see the addresses there, whether you're in Opelika or Birmingham. Hit either location when you get to the counter and let them know that the War Report sent you. I want to thank our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Visit them for all your herbal medicinal needs. And our friends at the Buy Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. My guy Steve Watkins serving up cuts for the community, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. I want to thank our friends at setsforsociety.ai. Get to know yourself on another level with setsforsociety.ai. They have unique personality assessments that tell you about yourself, how you relate to a team, how you work within a team. You can become a better teammate, a better coworker, a better team member with setsforsociety.ai. Visit them today to start your personality assessment and get to know yourself. Check us out on podcasts, all the podcast platforms. We are there. The Auburn Express, Uptempo, College Zoop, Just a Sec, and the War Report Gaming channel, bringing you guys lots of great audio-only content. This episode, as well as all the episodes that we do on YouTube, will be on audio for you guys. So go over to your podcast platform, hit subscribe, turn on automatic downloads, and make sure you have alerts on for when we drop something. Guys, I can't stress enough, there are things that we put on pod that we don't put anywhere else. So you don't want to miss that content. We'll make sure to let you guys know if you watch the YouTube channel when we're dropping something that's exclusive to pod. So follow us on social media to make sure that you get all those announcements. And that's all we have for today.
Yes, indeed. Before you all get out of here, make sure you share the content with somebody at the War Report. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Completely free to do that. You can follow us on social media at the War Report on X and Instagram. We are TW Report on TikTok. More great Auburn Express content coming for you all for the remainder of the week. Mike, let's do Boss Toss and Loss this Sunday, man. Why not? Let's get it out of the way. Boss Toss and Loss
Time to make people mad.
Yep. So we'll get to it. So you guys make sure you tune into the weekend tailgate coming up this Sunday. We will boss, toss, and loss this Auburn season. We are out of here until the next time. And as always, War Eagle.